Hi, I'm Carrie Rappaport, and in this video I'm going to be showing some of my porcelain sculpting process for a sculpture inspired by Folio 81R of the Voynich manuscript. I'll be showing how I sculpt some of the nymphs that are going to be standing in this pool, and I always start by referring to the original drawings as I'm sculpting, and so I print out scaled up versions of the original drawings to the size that I'm actually going to be sculpting them. My goal in sculpting these figures is to really recreate in 3 dimensions the original proportions that we see in the Voynich drawings. So I'm not going for realistic body proportions so much as unrealistic body proportions, but in a very specific way. So I usually start by modeling the figure in 2 halves. I start with the bottom half first, and here I'm just starting to model the legs out of a solid piece of clay, trying to refer to the drawing and adjust the angle of the legs, and I'm looking at specific details like the curve of the stomach and just the outline of the drawing and trying to recreate that in 3 dimensions. Now, with this kind of porcelain sculpting, I don't want to have a large solid mass of clay because when this gets fired in the kiln later, there can be air bubbles trapped inside the clay and moisture in the clay that won't dry properly. So I'm trying to scoop out the inside of these shapes so that the clay will be as thin as possible. So here I've just started to make the torso and the head, and this is the method that I use. I don't sculpt the face to start with. I just kind of leave an empty space there where I'm going to be adding the face at a later step. And I add just the beginnings of where the arms are going to go, but those are also not added yet. So now I'm checking to see the proportions and how the 2 halves of the body fit together. This is after I've connected them and I'm working on the face. I previously made some little molds to make the nymph faces. These are sort of a partial impression of the face, and I add on to these to make them more individualized. But I have several different little nymph face molds that I made before. I'm doing the same thing here where I'm scooping out the excess clay from the inside and then carefully connecting them together without squishing the features of the face. The clay is still very soft at this stage, so I'm able to add more clay to the face. Like, for example, I want the nose to be a little bit different shape. I'm also going to add quite a bit more clay to the forehead. Some of the Voynich nymphs, like this one, have really bumpy forehead. They kind of have a really oddly shaped head. Well, they all do, but this one in particular, anyone who's studied the Voynich imagery will see the difference between some particular nymphs have this really strange curve to their forehead. So I'm trying to recreate that. And then part of modeling in 3 dimensions, I'm also having to imagine how the back of the hair would look, some extra details like the crown. I always like to make it look kind of ambiguous with the hair and the crown sort of merging together, so it's not really clear what kind of head dress she's possibly wearing. At this point, I go in with lots of little detail sculpting tools to make the eyes and just sort of individualize her expression. Before I add the legs and feet, I am checking again the proportions. I want to make sure that she's basically 4 heads tall and no more than that. Positioning the arms and then going to be adding those as the last step. Porcelain has to dry very, very slowly and gradually, or it can crack. So this sculpture is going to have to dry for probably a couple of weeks before it can even be fired in the kiln.